Hey guys, good morning. So I wanted to pick up where I left off when I was talking about Robin Gecht. Gecht, there isn't much more information about him. However, what I did find interesting was that he at one time was employed by, now wait for it, John Wayne Gacy. And it appears that he had ambitions to recruit young men that were, about 10 years younger than himself in order to form a cult with the intention to commit these horrific crimes. Now, along with Eddie Spritzer, he also recruited two brothers, Andrew and Thomas Corkalis. And I didn't see any information really on them other than that they had come from a large Greek Orthodox family. Now, stepping back and reading what I read about this whole crime spree and the situation, it appears that Robin Gecht was putting together something that could have been taken out of Charles Manson's playbook. He was able to use these young men and influence them to do what he wanted because he employed them and he provided money for them. So they probably felt eventually that they were indebted to him. He provided them employment, he paid them, so now what are they going to do to reciprocate? You have to remember, all four of them on the surface appeared normal. Robin Gecht was an electrical contractor, and he did some handyman work in his neighborhood. And this is where he had these young men help him. Little did they know when they accepted his employment that they would end up becoming his accomplices to these sick, violent, and twisted crimes. Okay, guys, now that's enough of the backstory of Gecht and his three accomplices. I'm going to get into their crimes now, and I want to warn you that this is very dark, very gross, very sadistic, and probably one of the most horrific crimes I've heard about, at least here in the Midwest. So the Ripper crew was said to have a habit of piling into Robin's reddish-orange 1975 Dodge van, and they would cruise the streets of Chicago looking for women that might be alone. And once they would identify a woman, they would pull over and grab her, pull her into the van, and bring her either to a local motel or to Robin's house, where they would rape, torture, and mutilate them. Now, what nobody knew, not even Robin's wife, is that Robin had built a satanic temple in his attic, and it has been said that all the walls were painted red, and there were black crosses that were flipped upside down in there. There was also an altar that was covered in candles and red cloth. And when the men brought the women to Robin's home, they would lay her on an altar or on a bed, and Robin would start to read from the Satanic Bible. And during the reading, Eddie Spritzer, Andrew, and Thomas Corkalis would rape, mutilate, and torture the victim while she still was alive. Now, part of this mutilation included amputating the left breast of the victims. And once they removed the left breast, okay guys, this is where it gets really sick. I'm just preparing you. They would take turns raping the chest wound and masturbating onto the amputated breast afterwards. Robin then would cut a piece from the amputated breasts, and they would eat it. And they said it was part of their satanic ritual, their communion. I told you this was pretty dark. Now, their first victim, or thought to be first victim, was a woman by the name of Linda Sutton. She was a young mother. She had a son by the name of Anton, who was 9 at the time, a daughter who was only 1 that went by the name of Shyvana, when she was abducted on May 23rd of 1981. She simply was just walking near her home in the Wrigley Field neighborhood when the Chicago Ripper crew pulled her into the van, and threw her down. They handcuffed her, they raped her, they tortured her, and they mutilated her body, and then murdered her. 10 days later, police were called to the Rip Van Winkle motel to investigate a very putrid smell. They thought they were looking for an animal carcass because of how horrible this smell was, and they ended up finding Linda's body, and it was in absolutely horrid condition. It had been chewed up by animals. There were some signs of maggots, but what the police did notice was that the handcuffs that were placed on Linda still remained around her wrist, as did a gag that was put in her mouth. Her autopsy revealed that she had only been deceased for 3 days, even though her body seemed to have decomposed to the point where they thought she had been dead longer. But the coroner's office had said that because her breasts had been removed, that she had these open wounds, this caused her body to decompose at a much faster rate. The autopsy also showed that while she was still alive, she had been raped and sodomized multiple times, and that her left breast was removed. Now, why they say these many days, I don't know, but they believe that she was tortured for 7 days before she died. On February 12th of 1981, a woman who worked as a cocktail waitress abandoned her car because it ran out of gas. So it appeared that she was trying to go get some gas for her car. She had left her keys inside, but instead of returning with gas, her nude body was found on the side of the road. She was clearly tortured, raped, and mutilated, just like the first victim, Linda Sutton. Days later, the body of a Hispanic woman was found, and one of her breasts had been bitten off all the way through, and someone had masturbated on her multiple times. Now, you would think that they would be able to collect the DNA. I mean, we're talking about 1981, so I don't know why they weren't collecting DNA and seeing if it was anywhere, in their system that they would be able to identify at least a suspect. I guess, maybe this DNA testing came in afterwards. The next victim hits close to home. She is the young woman who I graduated high school from. On May 15th of 1982, Laurie Barrowski was going to her job at the Remax real estate office, which was only 3 blocks from her apartment. Before she left, she talked to her 14-year-old brother, and he had some kind of premonition because he had asked her if she wanted him to walk with her, so she got there okay. and she declined, telling Kim that she'd be fine walking by herself, as it was just 8:30 in the morning. And, we lived in a very safe area. Now, when I think about where she lived in relation to where she worked, we worked in the same mall. It was right around the corner from our high school. And this was like an L-shaped strip mall. And there was, Home Depot was there. There was a grocery store, a cleaners. I worked for the Pearl Vision. What else was there? Let me think. Portillo's hot dog stand. And then at the very end of this L-shaped strip mall was Remax Realtors. And this is where she was a manager at. And what they say is that she was just outside of her office and just about to go in the door when it appears that perhaps the Chicago Ripper crew had pulled up and grabbed her and pulled her into their van. And it seems as when they grabbed her that her high heel shoes fell off and her keys fell and her makeup was scattered in the parking lot. Now, the office broker of this Remax had arrived at 8:45, and he had seen her shoes and saw the keys, noticed that she did not unlock the door, and then saw her makeup scattered all over the place, and he knew something really horrible had happened. And so he called the police, and a search for Laurie could begin immediately. I remember when the news reports came out, the police, Elmhurst police, didn't have much to go off of because, like I said many times, our suburb was very, very safe. I mean, you could walk around and think nothing of it at 10 o'clock at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning. It was crime-free. And I don't believe that there was anything in way of security cameras on any of the buildings that they would be able to see what had happened. So what they did was they had come out and they asked for the public's health. And one of the detectives happened to be a licensed hypnotist. And because there were no eyewitnesses, this detective decided that he was going to use his skills to hypnotize people around the area. I was not one of them, but around the area to see if they could remember seeing something suspicious. And so he had selected a business owner, and he had hypnotized him, and he had asked him some questions, and this business owner was able to tell him that yes, you know what, he did see a reddish, orangish van kind of hanging around the area, and he thought it was strange because he had never seen it there before. So this was the first clue or lead in the case against the Chicago Ripper crew. Now, it seems a few weeks after abducting Laurie and murdering her, the Chicago Ripper crew spotted a young woman by the name of Chu Mak. She had immigrated to the United States from China just 3 years earlier, and she was working at her family's restaurant in Streamwood. On May 29th of 1982, Chu and her brother Kent had left their family's restaurant about 1 o'clock in the morning. And shortly after they started their drive home, like most siblings, they got into an argument. I go through this with my two daughters. on a daily basis, if not an hourly basis sometimes. Apparently, they got into this argument which revolved around the fact that Kent had taken the table away from Chu that night. Well, the argument had gotten so heated that Kent had pulled over to the side of the road and told Chu to get out and to wait for their parents to come along to pick her up. Now, when he left her, she had no money, no ID, and she barely spoke English. Now, when their parents arrived home a little while later, Kent had told them that Chu needed to be picked up and told them where he had left her. So they left immediately to go get her, but when they arrived, she was nowhere to be seen. They called the police, and she remained missing for 4 months until her remains were found in a South Barrington field in a shallow grave, not far from where her brother had thrown her basically out of the car. Her autopsy had shown that she had died from blunt force trauma and had skull fractures along with fractured ribs. On June 13th of 1982, a prostitute by the name of Angel York was picked up in the Chicago Ripper's notorious reddish-orange van. Once she got into the van, Robin Geck had her remove her clothes, and then he proceeded to handcuff her wrists and ankles, and he forced her to perform oral sex on him. And he threatened her that if she tried to move, he would stab her with the knife that he was holding. When she was done, he had her wrap pantyhose around her breasts as tightly as she could, and then he forced her to stab herself in the left breast. Well, when she did this, he became extremely aroused, and he used the knife that he was holding to widen the wound in her chest, and then he raped the wound. I'm telling you, these guys are really flippin' sick. I mean, sicker than I've ever seen. When he was done, he closed the wound with duct tape and threw her out. Angel was fortunate because she survived her attack, and she was brought to the hospital where she was stabilized and treated, and the police were called in, and she willingly told them everything that she could remember. But unfortunately, the information that she provided was not enough to stop the Chicago Ripper crew. Now I'm going to end here for this video, and we'll pick up on a third video. There's some more very gruesome details coming forward, and I thought I would rather, for my own mental health and yours, not bombard you with such gruesome crimes that were done. So look for the next one tomorrow. If you have any comments, or you'd like to hear more of these kind of stories, or if you have other stories that you want to hear about, please don't be shy. Go ahead and put that in the comment section. I'd appreciate if you'd give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a great evening.